Welcome to the fourth video on how not to be a noob or how to improve your gameplay in Battlefield 4. If you missed the previous three videos, the links are in the description. Make sure you go ahead and watch those as they provide foundational information in which we'll be referring to in this video and in future videos. We will also have future videos, so please go ahead and subscribe. Click that smiley face in the upper right hand corner of your screen so that you don't miss our next episodes. And with me here today we have B-Dub and Captain Muricas, competitive players that will be sharing some of their tips and tricks that help them to be better players. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Our first point we'd like to cover today is get comfortable. We covered this in depth in our first video, but we're going to quickly review it. And why don't you go ahead and do that for us today, Captain Muricas?
The first important feature I assess myself with when I start gaming here on PC goes down to my mouse pad, my monitor, my chair, specific way I have my keyboard set up. Just making sure you're comfortable while you're playing. It's going to allow you to play longer. It's not going to give you any distractions while you're playing. So go back to that. If you missed that first episode, go back and review that.
Great point. And our second video we covered doing your homework and learning the game mechanics, and you'll want to go ahead and watch that again. But we do have some additional points we wanted to add, and one of them is accepting revives. B-Dub, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that a little bit?
So there's actually quite a bit of nuance involved in accepting a revive. A lot of people don't know you can accept a revive faster if you just hold the spacebar down and hold your jump key and your forward key. This will basically put you straight into a sprinting animation, which will make you really hard to shoot. This is obviously situational. You know, you don't want to do this in every scenario. I think Merc can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, accepting revives definitely got me killed numerous times, depending what I want to do in that situation. Obviously, if you're not being suppressed and you're getting revived, go ahead and do what B-Dub said. But if you're continually getting suppressed in your revive screen, the last thing you want to do is get up and sprint and give that guy a shot at you. So once you get revived, don't automatically accept it right away. You're going to have some time there to accept it or not. And go over the situation, whether you're being pinned down or whether you're not. If you're being pinned down, wait for it out. Wait for him to stop shooting, and then get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, even beyond that, if you're behind cover, assess your situation before you died. You know, like remember where you died. That'll help you be successful in accepting more revives and not just instantaneously dying because you're being revived.
One of the things I like to do when I'm getting revived too, guys, is if I'm taking fire, is to push space and then Z real quick, and that way my character stays prone.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go ahead and move on to our next mechanic that we wanted to discuss, reload cutoffs, especially with RPGs. B-Dub, why don't you go ahead and explain that to us?
So RPG, the reload animation can actually be cut off before the animation finishes. I've come across this just being an avid tank driver. If you watch in the bottom right of your screen, hardcore players don't have the benefit of doing this, unfortunately. You can look at when the round actually registers the reload. So the animation will not finish before that. So you can actually just cut off the reload animation by switching to a different weapon. You will reload faster. It's fractions of a second, if a second faster, but if you're in a tight situation where you had to jump out of your tank and shoot off an RPG real quick, it'll save your life.
Okay. Good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next point we wanted to discuss, visual suppression, scope deviation, or optic sway. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, optic sway, the Battlefield 4 suppression system is completely different than the Battlefield 3 suppression system. They introduced what's called, as B-Dub calls it, scope deviation, and as I call it, optic sway. Basically, when you're being suppressed, and you notice when you're ADSing, your reticle will actually do almost a figure 8 pattern if you're being suppressed. Now, this is going to lead to a lot less accuracy if you're trying to shoot while you're experiencing this optic sway.
Especially considering that your point of aim that entire time will stay the same. So your sight will not actually be where your point of aim is.
So I could be aiming at some guy's head and I'm experiencing suppression, but that's not actually where I'm aiming because I'm being suppressed. That's what you're saying?
Right. So say you have a red dot, you have a dot in the middle of your sight, you're countering that visual recoil. What you're actually doing is moving your point of aim all over the place because the point of aim is not the same as what your sight indicates to you.
A lot of the weapons in Battlefield 4 have different suppression mechanics as to when the optic sway will start to affect you. LMGs obviously have the most powerful suppression.
DMRs as well?
Yeah, DMRs as well. You'll experience more optic sway if you're being suppressed by those compared to assault rifles and carbines.
So the best way to counter that is to take cover, wait for them to stop firing, and then start to aim at your enemy. Is that what I'm understanding here?
I mean, that on top of, if you're actually using a laser sight, this is another reason to use the Cobra over the Coyote, as your sights don't overlap ever, because the Cobra has the three-pronged reticle. You can actually aim with a laser sight if you have that on your weapon. That's also another benefit to using the green over the red, because it's easier to differentiate where your actual point of aim is from where the visual recoil on your sight is.
That's very true.
Okay, great point, guys. What about using the new peek mechanic, peeking around cover? Let's talk a little bit about that.
The peeking system in Battlefield 4 is new. Obviously, it wasn't in Battlefield 3. The peeking system is actually an animation which helps you in cover, and it can actually not help you in cover. It's important to know when to use peek and when not. Peeking includes popping over cover, and it also includes looking around corners. If you go up to a corner, you'll see the animation start. You'll start leaning to your left, or you'll start leaning to your right. That's when you can utilize the actual peeking animation. And also if you're trying to peek over cover, you'll notice your gun will actually raise up a little bit. This means that you're about to enter the peeking animation. And if you right click to ADS, this will allow you to utilize that.
Yeah, and basically what happens is if you're peeking left or right, you'll actually expose less of your body because you will not expose from your waist down. It's pretty much just, so if you're peeking around a left corner, it'll be your left shoulder and your face. But the disadvantage to that is that it changes your point of aim, and that's totally dependent on the animation. So if you're looking for muscle memory or things of that sort, I feel like this will disadvantage you. That's why I play with it disabled.
Okay, great points. And in our third video, we discussed squatting up and team play, and how that could benefit your KDR, your score per minute, and just the overall enjoyment of the game, as Battlefield 4 and really the entire Battlefield series was designed around teamwork and squad play. So let's just review that real quick, guys. Let's go ahead and start with Merc.
Yeah, I'm going to summarize this real quick. Squad up. This is an easy mechanic to utilize in Battlefield 4, and it's important to know the mechanics of the squad up feature. Basically, whether you're pubbing by yourself or you're with friends, make sure you utilize this feature. That means using voice chat within your squad. Start communicating with your teammates. Break that ice. Get them to talk. Get them to utilize their class perks. Get them to utilize their class gadgets. So all build teamwork and giving you mission success.
Great point. And I think a lot of people forget about the comm system that's built into the game. And
yeah, I mean, a lot of the times you join a squad, a lot of people are apprehensive to actually talk, but if you just start talking, a lot of people will catch on to that, and they'll just start, oh, so-and-so is at A, etc. And it'll evolve into a more collaborative process.
Which is great, because it brings us to our next point, which, to a veteran player, this is obvious, but we've all been on servers where the enemy is not spotted, and that's our point, spot your targets.
Yeah, and there's obviously a certain amount of communication that goes into that as well, but I mean, an action, even if you're not talking, an action as simple as just hitting the Q button on a target will help your teammates.
Yeah, normal mode, spotting feature, 3D spotting. It's going to help you a lot. It's going to help your teammates a lot. You're probably going to get more kills out of it too. So spam Q, use that Q button as much as you can. Sometimes you might spot an enemy that you didn't even know was there. So utilize that feature and it'll benefit you and your team.
Yeah, and I mean, even on top of that, you know, give a quick audio cue. Hey, I spotted so-and-so on A or C or whatever.
Yeah, because sometimes the spot just won't take, too. I've noticed sometimes with a tank or an aircraft, you have to continually spam that Q button sometimes for that 3D icon to come up. But if you call it out, it's just as effective. Which brings us to our next point of dropping ammo or meds behind cover. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
If you're not doing it, you're wrong. Let me just go out and say that. I can't count how many times I've had support guys or medics not drop what they're supposed to, and we all wipe and we all die and everybody rages. So make sure you utilize that, whether you're moving, whether you're behind cover, even if you're not getting shot at. You know what? Throw it down, because you know what? If a guy starts engaging you from an angle you don't see him at, guess what? You already have your med kit down and you're going to start healing yourself, and that might give you the advantage of if you snap and pop them.
As simple as where you throw it behind cover. I mean, you're going to want to benefit your team and yourself in that way because it'll stop you from getting shot.
One last thing I want to also mention for med kits, if you're sprinting and you're getting shot at and you're trying to get to cover, you know what? Throw that med kit in front of you. It's going to go in front of you whichever way you're sprinting, and that'll actually heal you while you're still running trying to get to cover. So make sure you utilize that feature too.
Great points. Speaking of moving, our 6th point is keep moving and don't go prone for long. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that, guys. Beat Up, why don't you go ahead and start?
If you're going to play defensively, which is normally when you would go prone, you know, you're watching an objective or so forth, you want to make sure you're in a proper position on that objective and behind proper cover to actually sustain that prone position. You obviously don't want to go prone in the middle of a road or anything, because you're just going to die right away because you're a sitting target, you're a sitting duck. But another thing is cover versus actual concealment. Yeah, you obviously want to take into consideration, can they shoot through my cover or concealment? And that's the difference. You know, they can obviously shoot through concealment. So, you know, that would be the bushes on Caspian border that conceal you visually, but don't actually provide you cover from incoming fire.
Also, while prone, if you're behind cover, and you're actually in a tight spot, while you're prone, the Battlefield 4 mechanic in prone is kind of weird. It'll actually push you away from the cover if you start moving around. Basically, if your legs or any part of your body starts touching the cover, it's going to push you the opposite way of that cover. This is unlike in Battlefield 3, where you could go prone behind a tight spot, your body would just stay there. You know, half your body would be through the wall. In Battlefield 4, it's not like that. Prone feature will actually push you away from cover if you're in a tight spot and you're moving around.
And another thing I wanted to mention was just the general solidness of the objects you're behind. You want to make sure, I mean, there's some metal objects that are actually deceiving. A lot of sheet metal objects you can be shot through.
Yeah, one additional point real quick, as Beta mentioned there, cover. This is not destructible cover. This is sustainable cover, like a rock, something that you know a rocket or a bullet cannot penetrate through.
And that wraps up our video for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click that like button and to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. And until next time, see ya!